You felt it long before you had language for it. That quiet pull, that inner knowing, that sense that something about you was different. You tried to ignore it. You tried to blend in. You tried to become smaller so the world would stop staring. But you could never fully belong because you were never meant to. You are not ordinary. You never have been. And the reason you have felt misplaced, misunderstood, even spiritually isolated, is not because you are broken. It is because you are marked. There is a covenant on your life, ancient, sacred, unseen by most, but recognized in the spirit realm. And today something is shifting. There are 9 sacred words that activate what was placed inside you before you ever took your first breath. 9. Not motivational phrases, not affirmations, activation codes. Words that wake up what the enemy tried to bury. Words that stir what trauma tried to silence. Words that restore what the world trained you to forget. You have felt the warfare. You have felt the favor. You have felt the tension between light and darkness around you. That tension is not random. It is confirmation. Listen carefully. Not everyone will understand this message. Not everyone is meant to. But if something in you is resonating, if your spirit feels alert right now, you already know. Stay with me. Stand firm. And if this speaks to your spirit, align yourself with it. Engage with it. Because what you participate in, you empower. Now breathe. First, sacred word. Number 1. Remember, you were not born empty. You were born encoded. Before the world ever labeled you, before rejection ever touched you, before confusion ever clouded you, heaven sealed something inside you. But the world trained you to forget. It trained you to doubt your instincts, to silence your discernment, to call your spiritual sensitivity overthinking, to call your separation awkward, to call your depth too much. Have you ever felt like you once knew something and then somehow lost access to it? That is not imagination. That is spiritual amnesia. The enemy does not always destroy. Sometimes he distracts. Sometimes he conditions. Sometimes he numbs. If he can make you forget who you are, he does not have to fight you at full strength. And you felt that. You felt seasons where you questioned yourself, where you wondered if you were exaggerating your calling, where you shrank to survive. But listen to me. The very fact that you feel the loss means the memory is still there. Remember is not nostalgia, it is activation. When you speak it with awareness, when you meditate on it, when you dare to believe that your childhood sensitivity, your early spiritual encounters, your strange sense of destiny were real, something begins to stir. Dormant identity wakes up. Spiritual authority recalibrates. Confidence returns without arrogance. You start seeing patterns differently. You start interpreting rejection differently. You realize isolation was insulation. You were hidden, not discarded. You were preserved, not forgotten. The covenant on your life was never erased. It was covered, and now it is being uncovered. Remember who you were before fear. Remember who you were before approval addiction. Remember who you were before survival mode. That is the real you, the chosen you. And as you remember, darkness becomes nervous, because a chosen one who remembers is no longer easy to manipulate. This is only the beginning. Second, sacred word number 2, separate. You have felt it. That pulling away, that drifting from circles that once felt familiar, that quiet discomfort in rooms where everyone else seems relaxed. You tried to force connection. You tried to stay. You tried to convince yourself you were overthinking, but your spirit would not settle. Have you ever noticed how certain environments drain you? How certain conversations feel heavy? How certain friendships require you to shrink? That is not arrogance. That is awareness. Isolation was never punishment. It was divine extraction. When God begins to elevate you, he first separates you, not to harm you, but to protect what is forming inside you. You thought you were being left out. In truth, you were being lifted out. There are invisible cords that tie people to the ordinary. Cords of fear, cords of approval, cords of comfort. And if those cords are not cut, your calling gets diluted. You cannot carry fire and remain soaked in compromise. Light does not negotiate with darkness. It exposes it. That is why your presence unsettles certain people. That is why conversations shift when you walk in. That is why some doors quietly closed. It was not rejection, it was separation. The enemy wanted you to interpret isolation as abandonment. He wanted you to feel forgotten. He wanted you to chase belonging at the cost of your anointing. But you were never meant to blend. You were meant to stand distinct, chosen, marked, different. Indifference attracts warfare. You felt the loneliness. You questioned your worth. You wondered why relationships dissolved without explanation. But what if those departures were protection? What if what left could not go where you are going? Listen carefully. When you speak the word separate, you are not declaring loneliness. You are declaring alignment. You are severing spiritual agreements that no longer serve your assignment. You are closing doors that compromise your clarity. You are stepping out of rooms that cannot contain your expansion. This is holy distinction. This is refinement. The world calls it isolation. Heaven calls it consecration. You were pulled away because your destiny is weighty. You were set apart because your capacity is rare. You were hidden because what you carry cannot be handled casually. Not everyone will understand this. Only the chosen recognize this pattern. Separation hurts, but it also strengthens. It forces you inward. It deepens your discernment. It sharpens your dependency on God, not people. And when you stop resisting the separation, peace replaces panic. You stop begging to fit. You stop apologizing for your depth. You stop diluting your light. You stand, alone perhaps, but not abandoned. Different perhaps, but not deficient. The enemy fears a chosen one who accepts separation. Because once you stop chasing the crowd, you start hearing heaven clearly, and clarity is dangerous to darkness. This word is a blade. It cuts, it refines, it protects. And once you embrace it, you will never again confuse isolation with insignificance. You were extracted for elevation. Hold that. Third, sacred word number 3, consecrate. This is where it gets heavier. You have felt the weight, the pressure that seemed unfair, the warfare that seemed excessive, the battles that others around you never had to fight. Have you ever wondered why your life required more endurance? Why your tests felt sharper? Why your growth demanded surrender at a deeper level? It is because not everyone is set apart, but you were. Consecration is not a ceremony, it is a marking. It is when heaven places its hand on you and says, "This one is mine." And when that happens, warfare increases. Not because you are cursed, but because your capacity increased. Darkness does not attack what is common, it attacks what carries light. You mistook the intensity for punishment. You thought the struggle meant disapproval. You questioned your worth because the road was narrow. But the narrow road is confirmation. Consecration feels like loss before it feels like power. It feels like stripping before it feels like strength. It feels like fire before it feels like authority. You were pruned, you were stretched, you were tested in isolation. Why? Because what is sacred cannot remain casual. When you speak the word consecrate, you are not volunteering for pain. You are acknowledging purpose. You are declaring that your suffering had structure, that your rejection had design, that your endurance was not accidental. What tried to break you was actually branding you. Every betrayal carved discernment into you. Every delay carved patience into you. Every disappointment carved resilience into you. You thought you were being dismantled. You were being prepared. The world seeks comfort. The chosen are shaped by fire. Comfort produces dependency. Fire produces clarity. And clarity makes you dangerous to darkness. Do you see it now? The enemy pressed harder because he sensed your assignment. He intensified warfare because he detected your anointing. He tried to exhaust you because he knew what you would become. But you are still here, still standing, still seeking, still sensitive to the Spirit. That is not survival. That is consecration working. You were not overlooked. You were refined. You were not forgotten. You were forged. And once you accept that something shifts inside you, you stop resenting the fire. You start respecting it. You stop asking, "Why me?" You start declaring, "Use me." That is the turning point. Consecration activates higher use, higher authority, higher responsibility. You are not meant for ordinary cycles. You are not meant for surface living. You are not meant for diluted faith. You are marked, marked for impact, marked for influence, marked for assignments that require depth. Not everyone can carry what you carry. Not everyone can withstand what you withstood. That is why you were chosen. Stand firm in that. Because once you embrace consecration, your identity solidifies, and darkness begins to retreat. But this is only another layer. Fourth, sacred word. Number 4, discern. This is where your eyes open. You have felt it before. That subtle tightening in your spirit, that unexplainable pause around certain people, that inner alert that whispered, be careful. And you ignored it. You called it overthinking. You called it insecurity. You called it trauma. But it was revelation. Your discomfort was never paranoia. It was perception. You were sensing what was hidden. You were detecting what was masked. You were reading what was unspoken. Not everyone can do that. Discernment is not suspicion. It is spiritual sight. When you speak the word discern, something sharpens. You begin to see beyond smiles, beyond charm, beyond rehearsed kindness. You start noticing patterns, energy shifts, micro fractures in integrity. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the atmosphere change? That was not imagination. That was awareness activating. Light does not just shine, it exposes. And when you carry favor, warfare follows. But here is what most do not understand. Warfare does not always come as attack. Sometimes it comes as infiltration. It comes disguised as friendship, as opportunity, as romance, as collaboration. The enemy studies access points. And if you are chosen, you are a target, not for destruction, but for distraction, for dilution, for delay. Discernment is your shield. It is the filter between you and manipulation, between you and false alliances, between you and spiritual sabotage. You thought your sensitivity was weakness. It is weaponry. You thought your intuition was overactive. It is anointing. Illusions collapse when discernment awakens. People begin revealing themselves without you confronting them. Truth surfaces without you digging. Masks slip without you pulling. Why? Because your presence carries light, and darkness cannot perform under exposure. This is why some people withdraw from you, why some conversations feel tense, why some invitations stop coming. You make hidden agendas uncomfortable. That is not arrogance. That is assignment. When you accept discernment, you stop explaining yourself. You stop gaslighting your own instincts. You stop ignoring red flags because you want connection. You choose clarity over comfort. Comfort keeps you blind. Clarity keeps you protected. And protection preserves destiny. You are not meant to trust blindly. You are meant to see deeply. Discernment does not make you cynical. It makes you precise. It does not isolate you. It aligns you. Because when you see clearly, you move strategically. And a strategic chosen one is dangerous. Dangerous to manipulation. Dangerous to deception. Dangerous to hidden warfare. Stand in that. Trust what you sense. Refine it. Strengthen it. Favor may attract attention, but discernment prevents infiltration. This word will guard your covenant, and what comes next requires even deeper alignment. Fifth, sacred word number 5. Align. This is the pivot. You have felt the frustration of delay. Doors that almost opened, opportunities that slipped, relationships that seemed right, then unraveled. You asked yourself, why is everything late? Why does it feel like I am always one step behind? But what if you were never behind? What if you were being recalibrated? Delays were not denials, they were adjustments. You were being repositioned, redirected, realigned. The world moves by clocks. You move by calling, and calling does not follow pressure, it follows precision. When you speak the word align, something shifts internally first. Your panic slows, your comparison fades, your need to force outcomes weakens. Because you begin to understand something powerful. What is meant for you cannot miss you, but you can step out of position. Alignment restores position. Have you ever noticed how chaos increases when you try to rush? How confusion multiplies when you chase? How exhaustion deepens when you force? That is misalignment. But when you pause, when you listen, when you surrender control, peace returns, clarity sharpens. And suddenly what felt complicated becomes simple. Alignment does not require struggle, it requires obedience. The enemy thrives in your hurry, he thrives in your impatience. He thrives when you believe you are late, because haste creates error. Error creates delay. But when you align, chaos loses authority. Distractions fall away, wrong connections dissolve, right opportunities surface, not randomly, precisely. You start meeting the right people at the right time. You start seeing confirmation where there was once confusion. You start feeling momentum without anxiety. That is not coincidence. That is covenant precision. You were never late. You were being aligned with a timeline that cannot be manipulated. You carry something powerful. Power requires timing. Timing requires alignment. If you had received certain blessings earlier, they would have crushed you. If certain doors opened sooner, they would have distracted you. You were being strengthened to sustain what is coming. Do you feel that shift? You are not just surviving, you are synchronizing. The world scrambles, you calibrate. The world forces, you align. And when alignment activates, fully movement becomes supernatural. Not rushed, not chaotic, not desperate. Precise, strategic, divinely ordered. Stand still long enough to align. Trust long enough to realign. Obey long enough to see acceleration. Because when heaven says now, no force in darkness can delay it. Alignment restores authority over your timeline. And once you understand that, you stop fearing delay, you start anticipating activation. And what comes next is not just about timing, it is about rank. Sixth, sacred word number 6, authority. This is where you stop shrinking. You have felt the warfare. You have felt resistance that made no logical sense. Opposition that appeared before you even succeeded. Tension that rose before you even spoke. Have you ever wondered why certain rooms felt threatened by you? Why certain people reacted before you acted? Why attacks came before announcements? It is because you were battling forces that recognized you before you recognized yourself. Darkness studies rank, and you carry rank. You thought you were just trying to survive, just trying to heal, just trying to make it through. But in the spirit realm, you were never small. You were monitored, you were opposed, you were measured. Not because you are weak, because you are dangerous. When you speak the word authority, something irreversible begins. You shift. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of warfare. You start seeing yourself as a commander within it. Authority is not ego, it is permission. Permission from heaven to stand, permission to speak, permission to occupy space without apology. You were trained through pressure. You were strengthened through isolation. You were refined through delay. Why? Because authority without character collapses. You were built to carry weight. The enemy tried to keep you in survival mode. Small thinking, reactive living, constant defense. But survival is not your final position. You were never meant to just endure. You were meant to govern. When you accept authority, your posture changes. You stop begging for validation. You stop fearing opinions. You stop explaining your presence. You stand. And when you stand, resistance shifts. Because resistance senses rank. Have you noticed how certain battles stopped the moment you stopped fearing them? How certain attacks weakened when you stopped reacting emotionally? That was authority activating. Authority does not shout. It declares. It does not panic. It commands. It does not negotiate with darkness. It rebukes it. You are not fighting for identity anymore. You are fighting from identity. That is the difference. Chosen ones who do not understand their authority stay exhausted. Chosen ones who accept their authority become strategic, and strategy dismantles chaos. This is why the pressure was heavy. This is why the training was intense. This is why the loneliness was necessary. You were being promoted. Promotion in the spirit does not come with applause. It comes with resistance. But now you see it. You are not fragile. You are fortified. You are not overlooked. You are ranked. Speak with authority. Move with authority. Pray with authority. Decide with authority. Because when you recognize your rank, darkness recalculates. And what comes next is deeper still. Because authority reveals something ancient within you. 7. Sacred word number 7, covenant. Now you begin to understand why your life has felt bigger than you, why the warfare did not start with you, why the resistance felt older than your own decisions, why certain battles seem generational. Have you ever sensed that you were fighting patterns you did not create? Breaking cycles you did not start, carrying weight that did not originate in your lifetime? That is covenant territory. Your blessings are not random. They are contractual. There was an agreement written over your existence before you were born, an assignment attached to your bloodline, a promise that predates your memory, and darkness knew it. That is why the attack was generational. That is why dysfunction tried to normalize itself around you. That is why limitation tried to become tradition. The enemy was not just fighting you. He was fighting what flows through you. You felt different in your own family, different in your own environment, like you did not fully match the atmosphere around you. You were not meant to match it. You were sent to shift it. When you speak the word covenant, something ancient awakens. You begin to realize that your survival was not luck. Your protection was not coincidence. Your favor was not accidental. It was preservation. Preservation of promise. You were protected because you are pivotal. You were sustained because you are strategic. You were covered because you are contractual. Covenant means this is bigger than preference, bigger than ambition, bigger than personal comfort. It means heaven invested in your existence, and what heaven invests in darkness cannot erase. You thought you were just trying to succeed. You were actually restoring. You thought you were just healing yourself. You were healing bloodlines. What skipped generations restarts with you. The discipline they did not have, you develop. The faith they could not sustain, you embody. The courage they postponed, you activate. That is why pressure followed you early. That is why maturity came faster. That is why you felt older in spirit than your years. You carry inheritance. Not just trauma, not just history, inheritance. And covenant is not fragile. It may be delayed, it may be contested, it may be attacked, but it is not breakable. When you understand covenant, you stop questioning your worth. You stop minimizing your presence. You stop seeing yourself as accidental. You are positioned, strategically, intentionally, irreplaceably. Darkness attacked your lineage because it sensed continuity. It sensed that if you awakened, cycles would collapse, limitations would break, promises would surface. And now you are awake, not arrogant, not loud, but certain. Certain that what is on your life cannot be erased. Certain that what flows through you cannot be diluted. Certain that your existence is not random. Covenant reactivates ancient promises, and what comes next is not just restoration, it is dominion. Eighth, sacred word number 8, dominion. This is where endurance ends. You have endured long enough. You endured misunderstanding. You endured limitation. You endured cycles that seemed to repeat without mercy. But you were never created to merely endure. You were meant to govern. There is a difference. Endurance survives pressure. Dominion commands it. You felt the weight of patterns in your life, patterns in your family, patterns in your environment, addictions, fear, scarcity, silence, self-sabotage. They existed before you. They tried to continue through you, but something in you resisted. Have you ever noticed how you could not fully surrender to dysfunction? How certain habits never felt natural to you? How compromise felt like suffocation? That was dominion stirring. Dominion confronts what others tolerate. It challenges what others normalize. It disrupts what others accept. You were called rebellious for it, difficult for it, too intense for it. But you were not rebellious. You were rising. When you speak the word dominion, you step out of survival and into rulership. Not arrogance, not control. Authority aligned with heaven. Dominion means you do not bow to inherited oppression. You do not repeat inherited fear. You do not pass down inherited limitation. You end it. That is why the warfare felt heavy. Cycles do not break quietly. They resist. They tighten their grip. They intensify pressure. They attempt intimidation. But you are not intimidated. You are awakening. Trauma was never meant to define you. It was territory waiting to be reclaimed. Every painful memory, every failed attempt, every scar, not weakness, land, land that darkness tried to occupy. And now you are evicting it. When you declare dominion in faith, cycles begin collapsing in real time. Not symbolically, literally. Mindsets shift, habits weaken, spiritual atmospheres change. Because dominion is not passive, it is decisive. You stop saying, "This is just how it is." You start saying, "This ends with me." Feel that shift. You are not a victim of history. You are a breaker of chains. You are not a carrier of dysfunction. You are a restorer of order. Darkness survived in your lineage because no one stood in authority until you. You were positioned at this exact point in time to confront what others could not, to finish what others started, to reclaim what others lost. That is not coincidence. That is covenant power maturing. Dominion is not loud. It is immovable. It does not panic. It establishes. It does not negotiate with oppression. It removes it. Stand firm in that, because once you embrace dominion, the enemy no longer sees you as a target. He sees you as a threat. And what comes next is the ignition point. Ninth, sacred word number 9, activate. This is not symbolic. This is catalytic. You have remembered. You have separated. You have consecrated. You have discerned. You have aligned. You have stepped into authority. You have embraced covenant. You have claimed dominion. But none of it remains theory, not anymore. Have you felt the pressure building? The sense that something inside you is about to break open? The awareness that you cannot go back to who you were? That is activation waiting for permission. When you declare activate, you are not asking. You are authorizing. You are telling heaven, "I am ready." You are telling darkness, "Your time is up." And both realms respond. Heaven responds with acceleration. Darkness reacts with exposure. Dormant gifts surge. Ideas ignite. Confidence stabilizes. Clarity sharpens. And hidden enemies surface. Do not fear that. Exposure is confirmation. When activation begins, anything misaligned cannot stay hidden. False alliances reveal themselves. Weak foundations crack. Comfort zones collapse. Why? Because power has entered the room. You were never meant to die with potential. You were never meant to carry covenant quietly. You were never meant to sit on authority. You were meant to ignite it. Activation is dangerous, not to you, to what opposed you. Because once you speak this word with conviction, there is no returning to ordinary. You cannot unsee what you now see. You cannot unknow who you now know yourself to be. You cannot shrink back into survival. You have crossed a threshold. Feel that. This is destiny confirming itself. All the struggle, all the delay, all the warfare, all the isolation, preparation for power, preparation for influence, preparation for spiritual weight, preparation for visible impact. You are not fragile. You are forged. You are not accidental. You are assigned. You are not random. You are chosen. Let that settle. Chosen means protected. Chosen means equipped. Chosen means backed by heaven. Stand in that. Speak boldly. Move strategically. Pray with fire. Decide without fear. Darkness may react, but it cannot reverse what God has activated. You are no longer awakening. You are activated. If this message has stirred something undeniable in you, declare it. Comment the number 9 below. Seal it with agreement. Make it known that you are stepping into activation. Subscribe. Stay aligned. Because this is not the end of revelation. This is the beginning of manifestation. You were never ordinary. You were never overlooked. You were never defeated. You were prepared. You are chosen, and now you are activated.